All right, my name's Lars Peterson, as you can see on the screen, and I want to welcome you to this webinar on Stop Beating Yourself Up, using the power of mindfulness and self-compassion to navigate difficult times. And I think COVID definitely qualifies as a difficult time. Today's webinar will be about 30 minutes. Really encourage you to put a couple things in the chat feature. There's a question feature, obviously you can raise your hand, but in some way, if you can participate, that'll make today's webinar more interesting, and it'll be really good for the other participants to hear from each other. So I'm going to encourage you along the way to participate, even if it's just, a sentence or a few words. Barring that, if that's just something that's hard for you to do or doesn't work for you, then I'm going to be taking some pauses today and encourage you to write down a few notes to yourself, or at least pause and reflect on what I'm saying. The last thing that I want to have happen with this webinar is that 6 months from now, you're thinking back and let's see, what was his name again? Mars or Oli, or what was his name? And what was that? It was a good webinar, but I can't remember anything about it. So really like this to be something that you engage with and actually take something away and use. That would be kind of the goal, my goal for you. So with that, we'll just jump right in. These are I'm going to get myself out of the way here. These are the objectives. Understand why beating yourself up is counterproductive. We'll talk in a little bit of depth about why people do it. There's a reason. It didn't just come out of nowhere, and we have roughly 200 people signed up for today. So I don't think it's an unusual thing to happen. In fact, the vast majority of the clients I see have some form of this. And I do want to I'll give you just a very brief bio so you know where I'm coming from as we talk about this. I worked in business in a variety of business positions throughout my career. The last 2/3 or so in various leadership roles. Family business consulting is something I still do and did toward the end. In 2009, though, I went back to school. 2013, graduated from the University of Iowa with an MSW, and I've been in private practice. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in West Des Moines, and that's been since 2015. So there'll be a client example and that's part of the presentation and probably a couple more. And any clients I talk about, if I say female, it could be a male. If I say they're in their 30s, they could be 50. So I'll definitely disguise people. But a lot of times it's good to have some kind of an example or something to put the point, some way to tie the point to a real life example. So that's what I'll be doing. The second thing we'll do today is understand what being self-compassionate means and why it's so effective. And then I'll actually go over a little bit in depth, a couple of techniques that you can take away and hopefully start using at the end of today. All right. So definitions of mindfulness. This is Chris Germer. He's one of the authors of the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook and a program in mindful self-compassion. It's a lot of professionals participate in that training, but also a lot of lay people as well. He just says awareness of experience, whatever's happening right now, with acceptance. The one I like to use is paying attention to the present moment. So again, right now, with curiosity and openness. So that's a real flavor of, okay, what is this? And just being curious. So the keys are really present moment and an attitude of curiosity and acceptance. It's the opposite of autopilot. So compassion means, this will be a pause point, and feel free to put something into the chat feature or somehow interact, maybe write something down, think about it. What does compassion mean to you? And I'll give you just a moment to think about that. Do you have any reservations about becoming more self-compassionate? Many of my clients do. So we'll talk more about that later. So just notice if you do. And what are the potential benefits of becoming more self-compassionate? So hopefully you've been able to think that through a bit. Compassion today will just mean a sensitivity to suffering in self and others with a commitment to try to alleviate and prevent it. So scientific study has found that the core of compassion is courage. Without courage, we don't have the willingness to see into the nature and causes of suffering. We try to avoid suffering or pain. And the challenge is to acquire the wisdom we need to address the causes of the pain and suffering that we go through. So without courage, though, we tend to avoid, distract. It's a 24/7 world, and most of us have a smartphone that we can distract ourselves with very easily. In fact, in a recent study by Cigna, I believe, 60% of adults between 18 and 34, 60% said that they sometimes misuse their cell phone, used it too much. So there's lots of ways we can avoid the pain and suffering in our lives. Compassion means we face it. So mindful self-compassion just means willingness to engage, acknowledges the difficulty of a situation and the pain involved, also acknowledges I'm not alone. That's a huge piece of it. It's not just me. And there's a comforting, validating, and soothing piece, as well as a motivating, strong, and fiercely protective if needed. So just like if a child were running out in the street, you wouldn't say in a very soothing, comforting tone of voice, no, don't go out in the street. You would most likely yell, no, stop. And you would do whatever you needed to do to be fiercely protective at that moment. So compassion is like that as well. It's not just soft. And compassion means that you're looking deeply to understand how you got here. It's not about making excuses. It's about looking deeply to see, how did I end up here? So self-compassion is not giving myself a free pass. A lot of my clients think that's what it means in the beginning. It's not easy or wimpy. Actually, it's harder. It's not going to make me selfish. The studies, and there's quite a bit of research on this by Kristen Neff and others, is the more self-compassionate you are, the more compassionate to others that you are. And it's not a pity party. Actually, about 90% of people are more compassionate to others than themselves. And those other 10% is probably equal. I don't know hardly anyone who's more self-compassionate than they are compassionate to others. And self-compassion is not an intellectual exercise. It's not of, oh, I should be good to myself. I should be kind. It's not like that. So here's the benefits of over 1,000 studies: less depression, less anxiety, less stress, less shame, greater happiness, life satisfaction. Self-confidence is a big one. Self-criticism is at least from my perspective, the number one destroyer of self-confidence is self-criticism, beating yourself up. Physical health, more physical health. So as we go through this presentation, this is something to be aware of. Obviously, I can't see any of you. I don't know your history, your story. But if there is significant unhealed trauma, neglect, or abandonment, you may not feel comfortable with compassion. If so, this means you likely need the help of a good psychotherapist to help you navigate those turbulent emotions. So give yourself a pass as we talk today, if you feel a lot of emotions coming up, feel free to distract yourself, walk away, ground yourself, feel your feet on the floor. Do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, because sometimes just talking about self-compassion can be triggering to people. And so I want to make sure that if that starts to happen for you, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. And we're not going to go deeply into this in 30 minutes. So it's, I don't know how likely it is, but still it's a good thing to be aware of. Okay, let's talk briefly about how we work. This is a model, a kind of a simple model that I use with all my clients. All of us have these three systems kind of installed in us. The threat system is better safe than sorry. We're great at detecting and responding to threat. So I don't know any of you. At least I don't know who you are. I might know some of you, but Even if you're a really good thinker, even if you're up in your head a lot, if someone were to swerve into your lane while you're driving, you wouldn't say to yourself, let's see, it's 5 o'clock, so they might be eating. No, they're probably texting. No, I mean, you wouldn't do that. It'd crash, the minute you started thinking. You would immediately swerve. There'd be adrenaline and cortisol coursing through your body, and you would evade that threat. So the threat system is the strongest, fastest system in our body, and it's definitely operates on a better safe than sorry. Drive system, since we're not 8 feet tall, we don't have claws, we can't fly. We have this built-in system that makes us go out and look for food, clothing, shelter. Um, that's kind of way back. Nowadays, it's make sure we have a job, make sure we have enough to put food on the table, take care of the people in our family. The drive system also about sex, and it's really about anything that's needed to keep us going and keep our species going. So that's the drive system. Sometimes threat and drive meld together. If we have something bad happens, we may go out and we feel a sense of threat. We may go out and clean the garage, clean the house, get really into drive, work extra. Soothing system, another part of us, and I'm going through this really quickly, but just to give you a basis as we go into how beating yourself up works. The soothing system is also built into us. It's about being connected, safe, protected. So let's play this out. Thor and Jane are living in a cave. They hear a loud sound outside. Their threat system kicks in. They stay in the cave. Thor hears this sound again. His threat system isn't working so well. He goes out. He's kind of happy-go-lucky. He goes out to see what it is. First time, second time, third time, no big deal. Fourth time, it's a saber-toothed tiger out there. No more Thor. Okay, threat system. Drive system is what propels Thor and Jane to go out, get berries, get what they need to survive, do all of that. Soothing system, they have a new baby. That's what keeps Jane in the cave, nursing her baby, taking care of her baby, soothing the baby when it is upset. And so that's going way back into cave person days. That's still within us today. Those of you who have kids know that there's a definite bond between kids and their parents, and a soothing system that can be evoked. There's a soothing system between animals and humans. That's why therapy dogs or therapy horses are so popular and so effective, is because a really caring, unconditionally loving dog can evoke that soothing system. Now, we can also evoke that ourselves through mindfulness techniques, through reassuring self-talk. And so this is just a very quick overview of 3 systems within our body: the threat, the drive, the soothing. So let's say that this dog was out playing in its yard, and a very loud, aggressive dog came into this dog's yard and threatened this dog. So this dog would immediately go into threat system. It might bark, but I'm guessing fight, flight, freeze. I'm guessing flight. Okay, so this dog's going to run, either hide behind the owner, get in the house, do whatever it needs to do to get away. 10 minutes later, what's this dog doing? Take a second to think about that for yourself. What's the dog doing 10 seconds later? Or 10 minutes later, I'm sorry, not 10 seconds, 10 minutes later. It's sleeping. It's doing whatever it likes to do. Okay, someone comes into our house and is threatening and aggressive. 10 minutes later, what are we doing? We're thinking about it. 10 hours later, geez, I wonder why did they target my house? Why'd they come here? I wonder if they have friends. Are they coming back? What, do we need to put an alarm system in the house? I thought this was a safe neighborhood. On and on and on. 10 days, we may still be overthinking. And some of that's helpful. And 10 months, 10 years, sometimes the brain is still geared up. So that was very helpful when Thor and Jane days, because when they were out hunting and gathering and they forgot where they heard the saber-toothed tiger, if they would ruminate and think and think and think and then think, okay, yep, that's where it was. We're not going there. That would be helpful. Nowadays, just our thinking can evoke the threat system. Beating ourselves up especially evokes the threat system. Okay, so it's possible for us to keep the threat system running 24/7, even in the absence of any external threat whatsoever. One thought of, I'll never be good enough. I'm definitely going to get a bad review at work. There's a self-critic, the future. Why did I do or say that? There's a self-critic, the past. If they really knew me, they would know that or they wouldn't really like me, or they wouldn't want to spend time with me. There's a self-critic, social. Many, many years ago, when Thor and Jane say if they were living in a village, and you got put out of the group because you did something, whatever that was, to get put out of that group, you would not survive. So we have this strong need to be part of a group. And we can criticize ourselves about what we said, what we did. So living in the threat system, which beating ourselves up puts us in that threat system much more often, is in an anxiety-provoking, exhausting, and overwhelming place to be. So that's how this all kind of ties together in terms of anxiety, being in that threat system. And then we'll talk about how using that soothing or content system can help us get out of the threat system. Then you add on the COVID stressors, isolation, loneliness, concern about getting sick, concern of others, financial, work stress. And the work stress might be related to, why did I do that? You know what? Now I'm going to get laid off. I shouldn't have done. I should have been working harder. I should have, so relationship stress, negative news. So we've got these COVID stressors on top of our normal stressors. And it makes it easier for us to start into the self-critic. When we're calm and alert, when the threat system's not in charge, information sticks. We can connect. So when you think about being in the threat system, when that car is swerving into your lane, you are tunnel focused on avoidance. You are not thinking, there's some beautiful clouds today. Wow, what a sky. Impossible. You couldn't do that. So when you're calm and alert, you're much more open. You can see connections. You can see how things interrelate. You're open to new ideas. Calm and alert would be when that soothing and content system is kicked in, at least to some degree. You're also more motivated to make things work. You're not just totally focused on that threat. And actually, when you're calm and alert, there's less self-criticism, because self-criticism serves a function of keeping you safe or of preventing you from doing something that you think could get you put out of the herd or out of your social group. So we'll talk a little bit more about really the value of self-criticism or why we do it in a few minutes. Mindfulness is coming right into the present. So your body is present and your mind is present. I'm guessing for many of you, your mind wandered as we've gone on today, through part of this presentation. That's what minds do. That's, again, scanning the environment, making sure everything's okay, thinking about your to-do list, whatever that is. That's just what the mind does. Mindfulness is coming into the present, which is soothing and evokes a feeling of content. Not always, but oftentimes. So let's do a bit of a thought experiment. And this won't be as effective as if we could do this one-to-one, and especially since we can't interact. But we'll give it a go. And I think it'll be more effective than just talking through things. So I'm going to give you a second to think of someone you know who's between 7 and 14 years old. If you don't know anyone like this, it can be an adult that you knew at a younger age, a cousin, a nephew, a niece, a child, even yourself, someone from TV. Just get some kind of a person in mind that's somewhere between 7 and 14. Now there's going to be, this person's struggling in some kind of subject at school. And this would be pre-COVID, well, I guess in some schools, COVID days now. And these teachers are going to come in and they're going to try to help this person get beyond this problem, learn and move on, because this young person's really struggling, okay? And so teacher C walks in, and teacher C, we'll call this young person Joe, okay? Joe, I can see you're struggling. Well, you know what? You're you're a good kid. You'll get it. So, how's your parents doing? I haven't talked to them for a while. And how about your sister? Yeah, yeah. So, are you enjoying school so far? Okay, great. Well, hey, just keep at it, Joe. You'll be fine. Teacher C, I'm pretty sure we've all had them because pretty much every client I do this with says, "Oh, yep, had that teacher. Hands off, pretty lackadaisical." Teacher A, very high standards. Teacher A walks in to Joe. Joe, are you still struggling with this problem? Come on, Joe. You are smarter than this. You can get this problem. Now, Joe, what's going on here? Let's get to the bottom of this. Are you not doing your homework? You know, Joe, this is disappointing. Now you need to really buckle down. So, teacher A, high standards, wants Joe to do well. Is you can hear the fear kind of in teacher A's voice. And so those very high standards turn into harsh, critical feedback. Teacher B walks in. Okay. Teacher B says, "Oh, Joe, looks like you're struggling. I can kind of see it on your face. What's going on?" Joe says, "Well, I'm really frustrated." "Yeah, Joe, I can see that. This is a hard problem. So you're not alone. You're definitely not the only person that struggled with this one." "Well, let's think about this. You remember 2 weeks ago, Joe, when you had a really hard problem? Remember how you solved it?" "Ah, yeah, you took a few deep breaths, you stepped back from it, then you went at it from different angles." "Yeah, you're right. That's what you did." I wonder if that could work here." Joe says, "Well, yeah, I can try that." "Okay, well, why don't you try that? If that doesn't work, I wonder what some other things you can do." So they talk about that. Teacher B then also has very high standards. Teacher B says, "Well, Joe, you know what? Let's talk about your homework. Like what's going on at home. Are you doing your homework like you used to be? Yeah, I know you used to be pretty good at that." "Ah, you're not." "What's going on?" "Ah, okay. So let's develop a plan to address that. And do you think it'd be good, for the two of us to talk to your parents as well?" "Okay. Yeah." So teacher B, very high standards, comforting, soothing, but also a problem solver, gets to the bottom of it, really wants to make change. Teacher B is the one who really evokes change. All right. Before I go on to the next screen, when you do something wrong, something embarrassing, or you make a mistake, or you don't live up to your standards, when you do something wrong, which teacher is in your head? Pretty sure if you signed up for this webinar that at least some of the time, teacher A, that harsh, self-critical kind of beat yourself up voice. Okay. So the point is, if teacher B is so much more effective for Joe, this young kid, why wouldn't it be more effective for you? Okay. And that's a whole exploration on its own. All right. When I talk to clients about this, they'll say things like, "Well, I'd be lazy, or I wouldn't achieve so much, or I say something stupid in front of my friends and then they laugh at me," or all kinds of reasons. And when we really explore that, we find out that it's really not working. It's either keeping them from doing things they want to do, they don't go out with their friends, or it's holding them back, or it's really not helping because they're so nervous, then they say things they don't want to do or say. So this is really, I think, really captures it well. And I'm not going to read all of these. There's too much here. I'm just going to pause for a minute and let you kind of look that over. But the compassionate self, so being self-compassionate, again, wise, strong, but kind and caring, really a problem solver, that's where the power to change is. And that's where the power for us to perform at our best. And actually, there's quite a bit of research if you want to check out, again, Kristen Neff, Neff, has done research on performance. And the more self-compassionate you are, the higher your performance in general. That's with athletes, that's with other musicians and other areas as well. So again, this is not about being lame, pity party, easy. This is an example of not his real name, Stefan, trip to the East Coast with his wife and small child. And he's talking to me about this, and this is a real case with some differences. "I should be more worried about this. What's wrong with me?" That's teacher A. and just a lot of criticism. That's just a short version of it. So teacher C was, and this also came out. A lot of times people vacillate teacher A to teacher C. It goes back and forth. Teacher A is so loud and critical, they just get sick of it and go into teacher C and just distract and avoid. Teacher C was, just pack up in the car and go, you'll be fine. Well, the more we kind of dug into it, when teacher B finally made an appearance, when I was able to coax teacher B out, he said, you know what, I need to quit putting off a conversation with my wife about this and figure out at least some kind of a rough plan. It's not okay just to pack up the car and go. And beating myself up, it really isn't helping. Okay, so that would be a kind of a real life example. So Neff and Germer, through self-compassion, we become an inner ally instead of an inner enemy. So let's get practical as we get ready to wind down relatively soon. These are 3 ways that we can evoke that safe, content system, which is an antidote to the threat system and an antidote to the self-critical beating yourself up piece. One is coming into the senses, the 525, which I'm going to actually lead you through. Another is simple breath awareness, or instead of simply being aware of your breath, elongating the in-breath and out-breath. So maybe breathing in for 3 or 4, breathing out for 6 or 8, and doing around 3, 4, 10 of those, just really elongating and slowing down the breath. There's plenty of research that says that calms things down as well. Informal mindfulness just means whatever you're doing it fully. If you're eating, you're actually tasting the food. You're not on your phone thinking about something, doing 3 things while you're eating. Whatever you're doing, you're doing. You're driving, your hands are on the steering wheel, you're looking at the road, you're fully there. Informal mindfulness is something that I teach a lot of my clients, and it's very, very helpful. And there's all kinds of resources on the internet if you just Google that. A mindful self-compassion break, we'll try that out. Writing a compassionate letter to yourself. So that'd be you're struggling with an issue and you write a letter to yourself from that strong teacher B compassionate self. Or just some guided imagery about what would a compassionate friend say to me about this? Or if I had a really good friend struggling with this kind of thing, what would I tell them? And a number of my clients, they cannot be compassionate to themselves, but they can be with a friend. So then when I say, what would you tell a friend? As long as I catch them off guard and they don't say, I know what you're doing, you're trying to get, then they're able to do it. So it's in there, hard to access. So the 525. So just notice, and we're going to do this briefly, just notice the level of tension in your body right now. Notice if your shoulders are hunched up a little bit, and you can notice this by seeing if they'll come down. Notice kind of the face, the jaw, if there's any tension there. So just notice all that. And now, a very simple exercise we'll just do quickly. Find something in the room that's black, and now white, and now something red. Find something blue, and find something square. Now, see if you can find 2 sounds to listen to in your room. 2 sounds. One could be my voice. Now, notice your feet in your shoes or touching the floor. Notice your legs touching whatever you're sitting on. Notice your back, either if it's back against something like for me in a chair, or just notice any feelings in your back. Notice your breath in your belly, how your belly expands out, back in, out, back in. And notice whatever your hands are touching. So 525, finding 5 things, they can be anything. Notice 2 sounds. If you're out in nature, it could be 5 sounds, 555. Feel your feet on the floor. This is just getting us in the present moment in our senses. That's all it is. Mindful self-compassion break. So think of a situation in your life that's stressful, not a 9 or 10, 5, 6, maybe a 7. I'll pause for a minute so you can get something in mind. Visualize the situation, what's happening or what could happen. So really allow yourself to kind of go there, like, this is hard, this is challenging. Now try saying to yourself, no one can hear you, no one can see you, anything along the lines of, this is a moment of suffering, or ouch, this hurts, anything that's meaningful. One that I use a lot is just like, ouch. So recognition that there's something that hurts, and then feeling it. Not trying to get away from it, but actually feeling it in your body. Now offer yourself a gesture of soothing touch. Could be one or both hands on the heart. It could be really anywhere on your body that feels soothing, but it's important to not skip this step. So if you would, offer yourself whatever feels soothing, and you may need to experiment with this. And again, if you Google mindful self-compassion break, lots of examples. Now try saying to yourself something like, suffering is a part of life that everyone experiences. I'm not alone. Or, yes, of course this is difficult for me. I'm not alone. Something that lets you know it's not just you. And then the last is saying something reassuring to yourself, like a personal favorite of mine is simply, as I put both my hands on my heart, may I be a good friend to myself. Okay. So this is one of those things, the mindful self-compassion break, that feels artificial. It's like, this is dumb for a lot of people, but the more and the more and the more that you do it and practice it, it starts actually becoming very meaningful, and it can shift things and help you get out of that threat and get out of that beating yourself up mode into more of that content, safe mode. So takeaways. Based on today's presentation, I'm going to start doing. Please consider at least one takeaway on start doing. I'm going to quit doing. I'm going to continue doing. All right, I will turn it over to Johanna so she can talk a little bit about EAP benefits. Obviously, this, as you know, this was brought to you by Employee Family Resources, EFR. And also, if there's any questions, she'll be able to ask those of me.
Thank you, Lars. Yes, if anyone has questions for Lars about the topic today or the presentation today, please use the chat or raise your hand function, and I can moderate a brief Q&A at the end. While we're waiting for any questions to come in, I wanted to remind you that if your employer has EFR's EAP, you have access to a variety of services. And most likely, if you are listening, you are part of our EAP network. So you have a variety of resources available to you and anyone in your immediate family. So we typically say anyone you live with. It's possible that your immediate family includes people that you don't live with because maybe you have a child or children in college, or perhaps your children live with their other parent primarily, but they would have access to the benefits. But just remember that we're available 24/7 to offer phone support. You would be connected with a licensed clinician upon dialing our 800 number. We answer questions. We can set you up with services. A lot of times people don't really know if the EAP can help, or they don't know what exactly they need help with. And so it's just a really simple step of making that call to us to help us kind of guide the way. I realize that oftentimes that first step of making the call is the hardest for people though. So if it's something you've been thinking about using or thinking about having a family member in your household use, please don't hesitate to reach out. It's completely confidential, and there are a lot of great services that are at no cost to you. Just remember that you have access to not only in-person counseling or telehealth counseling. It depends on where you are and what what providers are doing. There are some places that have kind of moved back to in-person, and there are some that are still telehealth. So it just kind of depends, and we'll help you figure that out when you make the call. But we have a variety of services that are telephonic, financial consultation, legal consultation, elder and child care resources. There is one question. Someone said, I received a call during this. Is there a place to rewatch it? And yes, I would imagine that a lot of times we get interrupted during our webinars. And so within about 48 hours at the longest, if you go to www.efr.org/webinars, you'll find a suite of all of our webinars that you can watch. We have over a dozen there. We have several people just saying, thank you, Lars. This has been helpful. Really like the teacher examples. I like that one as well, Lars. Just a lot of gratitude is pouring in for you, Lars. I think you've made a difference in a lot of people's ability. I will say one thing I did for myself during a difficult time was I wrote a letter to myself, and I dated it from 1 year in the future. And it was a suggestion by a friend because I was so kind of caught up. I was ruminating. I was worried about everything that could go wrong and would go wrong. And my friend said, well, how about we focus on what could go right and what will go right? And that was really helpful for me. And I wrote a letter to myself and dated it, 1 year from the day I had written it. And I will say that it was a really powerful exercise, not just the day I wrote it, but then when that day rolled around in the future. So reading that letter to myself, it really did kind of show me the power of positive thinking, and that, you can be compassionate with yourself while being realistic with yourself about whatever situation is going on in your life. So that's my tidbit, but just a lot of thank yous are pouring in. So thank you, Lars, for everything. And if you're still on, don't forget to sign up. We have a couple of webinars in September, and that information is on our website, www.efr.org. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Johanna.
Bye-bye.